right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you guys. We will wrap up this morning the series, Love One Another, today. And we're going to be, this whole series has really been about the secrets to sustained, healthy relationships. This morning, I want to start with a question to get you to think about with me. If you were to pick the person in your life, or maybe it's a couple of different people, who shapes your future more than any other person, who would you say it was? The person maybe that dictates your moral code, what you would say is right or wrong, even if you're not quite to the place where you say, I'm not sure I fully agree with the Bible about every right and wrong, but you have your own moral code, and that's dictated by someone. Maybe even little things like how you dress, the kind of music that you like to listen to, maybe bigger things like the career path that you've chosen, the church that you chose to come to, and maybe even the spouse that you chose. These are all influenced by your friends. To some degree, they have influenced that process. And you think back over your life that some of the most exhilarating, greatest moments of your life, and then some of the worst, most regrettable moments that you may still be paying for the consequences of. Many times those were influenced by friends, by people that, that you allowed to get close to you. And their voice really swayed you. It mattered. It dictated the kind of choices that you chose to make. As a matter of fact, we could go so far as to say, and I'm about to go this far, to say to you, if you show me your friends, I will show you your future. And this is where it really gets even down to the more of the nitty-gritty with our kids. If you show me your kids' friends, I'll show you your kids' futures. The right friends can prepare us so well for the most important areas of life, spiritually and relationally, psychologically, and occupationally, all these different ways. But wrong friends can make us completely miss our purpose, our passion, our potential, our calling in life, can cause all kinds of pain and suffering that is unneeded and unnecessary. Life is hard enough as it is, but if you have wrong friends, it can create all kinds of heartbreak and heartache for you. Now, this morning, to illustrate this, I want us to take a look at an illustration from history, okay? And it's recorded for us in the book of 1 Kings of the Old Testament. And in 1 Kings, let me give you a little backstory so that you kind of get caught up with what we're about to look at. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at King David, one of the most famous kings in Israel's history, who had blown it. We looked at the story where he was like lowest low, but had been overall a pretty amazing king. And then he has a son named Solomon who rules in an incredible way. And he has now just passed away, and his son, Rehoboam, is about to be coronated or crowned as the new king of Israel. So what he's going to do is travel from Jerusalem about 35 miles north to Shechem, to this monumental city that is used for lots of different things in the Old Testament. But he's going to go there so that Israel can gather up, and they are going to crown him as their new king. But before they do so, they're about to make a huge request of him that will really dictate how his kingship will unfold over the next few days, as well as next several years. So let's take a look at what is it those people are going to ask Rehoboam in that moment as he's being crowned. In 1 Kings chapter 12, starting with verse 3 through 5, here's what it said. The whole assembly of Israel went to Rehoboam and said to him, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will, let's say it together, we will serve you. So they're making a promise. If you'll work with us here, Rehoboam, we will serve you. We will be committed to you, loyal to you. Rehoboam answered, go away for 3 days and then come back to me. So the people went away. So the very next thing that Rehoboam does is actually really wise. He sits down with all of his daddy's elder statesmen advisors. These are the men who had walked with his dad through really amazing, great decisions and some bad decisions. They were sort of walking historical records of what had happened over the several decades of Israel's history. And they were acquainted with all kinds of both good and bad choices that had been made over the last several years and decades, generations even, of this nation. And were able to maybe offer some real advice to Rehoboam. And so he sits down with them and he says, so what would you advise me to say to these people? How would you have me respond to them? And here is what the advisors of his dad said. It says, they replied, if today you will be let's say together, a servant of these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer so that they know, hey, he's willing to work with us here. They will always be your servants. Like what they're saying to you, they're good for their word. Like they're really going to do this. But you got to show them you're willing to work with them. And as a matter of fact, what these elders are doing for him is they are trying to explain to him the single most powerful relational principle in the universe. The principle of mutual submission or mutual servanthood. And so here's how that works. Any two people that are willing to say, I want to put you first and I'm going to serve you, or any two groups of people that are willing to do that, they will have the healthiest, most durable relationship possible between people, okay? So this is what they're pitching to him. If you would be willing to do this, it's going to go really well, and your kingship is going to maybe even surpass your father's. It's going to be amazing if you would be willing to do this. So, he hears them, but then it tells us the very next verse what he does, which was not very wise. But Rehoboam, let's say it together, what did he do? He rejected the advice of the elders that they had given him and consulted not the elders, but the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. So they're on his payroll, okay? He asked them, what is your advice? What advice would you give me? How should we, so he's like identifying with them, like you're my boys, you're my posse, we're real close. How would you have me answer to these people? What do you think? Well, first of all, think about this group. These were the young men, right? They had grown up with him. One thing that comes with youth is being naive, right? So if you're young today, what goes with that, and we've all been there, is being naive. Naive doesn't mean you're dumb. Let me make a distinction here. Naive doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means you lack experience. You can't know things you've never experienced or you've never been told about, right? That's where you're vulnerable. But anytime you're young or naive, God has put people around you that have already experienced, both good and bad, what you're about to experience. And there is insanely good wisdom that you could tap into if you're willing to listen to the elder people that God has put around you. I'm not saying they're always right about everything, but many times they have lived long enough, had enough experience that they can help you to sidestep a pitfall. And many of you in the room right now might be getting ready to embark on something, start something, some entrepreneurial endeavor, maybe writing a book, maybe starting something, I don't know, whatever it is. I bet you probably know somebody, even if you don't know you know them, I bet there's somebody in your life that has already done what you're about to do, and you would benefit greatly by sitting down with them and learning what they learned, okay? But instead, Rehoboam didn't do that. He sat down with all of these young men who all have the same shallow well that he's trying to dip his bucket out of, right? They don't have a lot of experience. They don't have a lot of wisdom. They don't have a lot of anything to draw on. And on top of that, they're on his payroll. So they're going to be motivated to want to tell Rehoboam what he wants to hear, right? And they're all kind of yes men. Now, not everybody that's on your payroll is a yes man or woman, but in this case, they definitely were trying to cater to him. So let me just say this before we go any further. I bet at some point in your life, you're going to be asked to give advice, okay, to somebody, or you're asking for advice. Let me just give you some parameters for good advice. When asking for or giving advice, let me give you 3 things. You might want to jot these down. First of all, when you're giving advice, is it fair? Is it fair not only to the person that you're talking to, but also those who it's going to impact, right? Secondly, is this helpful? And what I mean by helpful, please don't miss this. How I define helpful is it in alignment with God's standard, His Word. This will require the person who's given the advice to know God's Word about this topic, okay? So you need to make sure when you're asking that there's some clarity about that. And then finally, is this a positive solution? Is it moving in a positive direction? And I want you to think about these as we look at what the young men advise Rehoboam to do next. I can't help but laugh because it's that good, okay? Verse 10, here's what his friends respond. They say, "Now tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist, than my daddy's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips," right? This is where it really gets good. "I'm going to scourge you with scorpions." Like, that's what you should go out there and tell them, Rehoboam. And it's kind of like a scene from Dumb and Dumber where it's like, you guys are so dumb, but then you go and redeem yourself with something like this. That's amazing. Thank you. And that's what he decides to do. This is what he decides to tell them. 3 days later, Israel gathers back up. They all are there to hear. Potentially hundreds of thousands of people are there. Okay, what's the king going to say? Brand new king, new era, new chapter. What's he going to say? And he stands up there and says, "Now, my little finger is bigger than my daddy's waist. You thought it was heavy before. Just wait. He scourged you with whips. I'm going to get you with a scorpion," all right? And so what happens? 10 out of the 12 tribes of Israel say, "Peace out," all right? We are not hanging around for this. And from that moment forward, this is huge. This was one of the biggest shifts in history, right at this moment. This is when Israel is broken into a divided kingdom. Never again are they unified. It is Israel to the north. Those 10 tribes leave and say, "Forget you. We're going to go elect our own king," which is really ironic because his name was Rehoboam and they elect a guy named Jeroboam. So it's pretty close, right? So it's like, kind of like the name, but we would rather a J, okay? But anyway, it's a bad joke. It's a little Bible joke. Anyway, so they moved to the north and the south is called Judah. Now, from now on, they are a divided kingdom. And in many ways become kind of enemies of each other. It's horrible. And all of this happens because he listened to bad advice. He followed it. He didn't consider the source. He lacked wisdom. In other words, here's what I'm saying to you. It is impossible to live the right life with the wrong friends. It's impossible for your children to live the right life with the wrong friends. And ironically, this is just so, if you think about this, Rehoboam's father was considered one of the wisest men who had ever lived. And he was inspired by God to write some of that wisdom down. And I want to share some of it with you right now from Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, where Solomon was basically talking about friendships here. And he says this, he says, "Walk with the wise," and guess what's going to happen? Become, let's say it together, wise. You will become wise. "For a companion of fools suffers harm." It's like Solomon is saying, so which one do you want? Which one do you want? Because it will be dictated by those that you spend time with, those that you walk with, a metaphor for how you live this life, or you are a companion with. You're either going to suffer harm or you're going to grow wise. You grow wise from people who are taking God's wisdom, putting it into practice, and you see it. Their marriage is blessed. Their family is blessed. What they put their hand to, the influence they have in the community, there's so much like spiritual harvest that's coming from their life. And we are never, ever more than one generation away from absolute disaster. So don't ever assume, oh, they're getting it. Yeah, the kids they're getting all that wisdom. Yeah, for sure. You better be intentional about it. Make sure you're connecting, you're talking. Your friends and your kids' friends will determine the quality and the direction of your life. Did you hear that? Your friends, your kids' friends will determine the quality and the direction of your life at any given time. So, we got to ask the question, what does a true friend look like? What does that look like? Solomon again tells us in Proverbs 17:17, a friend is always loyal, and a brother is born to, let's say it together, to help, right, in a time of need. That's right. And of course, ladies, this is just a proverb, so you could substitute in a sister, right? Sister is born to help in a time of need. It's exactly right. That this is something that he's trying to help us to see. There is a vast difference between just someone that knows you well. You know lots of people that might know you well. That does not mean they are a good friend. The difference, the stark, huge difference, the greatest evidence between someone that knows you well and a friend is what do they do in your time of need. And a crisis comes along, hardship, difficulty, who shows up for you? Who's there? Who's reaching out? Who's saying, I'm walking side by side with you. I'm praying for you. I'm here. Who are those people? Because many times in a world that moves towards catering to what we want in the moment, people will hang around for you in a friendship as long as they're getting what they want out of it. And it's all fun and everything's great and positive and everything. But the moment you're going through hardship, a lot of them, you don't hear from them anymore, right? The big difference between someone that knows you well and who is an actual friend. And if we want to have the right friends, here's just where I want to spend the rest of our time. If we want to have the right friends, we have to be the right friends. We have to be the right friends. We have to take an initiative to become the kind of people that we hope that we could be friends with. And this is really applies to our marriages, to our families, to our work relationships, your siblings, all across the board, all the relationships. In other words, how to give CPR to your friendships, how to breathe new life into your marriage, into your friendships, your close friendships, your kids, your parents, you name it, any relationship. So let's talk about this for a little bit. And CPR is going to be an acrostic for these three different things that we can give, how we can show up for other people that could make a huge difference. Here's number one. I want to encourage you to care more about the friend than you do about how the friend thinks about you, right? There's going to be times where you need to show up in love with humility and gentleness and to say something they are not going to like. And this, for grown people, mature, educated people say, oh, it's too awkward. I don't think I want to have that conversation. That really tells me how shallow that relationship was in their mind, how shallow that friendship was. Because they really care more about what the friend thinks about them than they do about the friend. As long as I'm being thought of well, but the moment you're asking me to kind of have a hard conversation, then forget about it, right? No. This is where sometimes we may need to come with humility, patience, all the things we talked about. You remember putting on last week? We talked about compassion, kindness, gentleness, humility, and patience. Pray God will help you with that. That's Colossians 3:12. We looked at that last week. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24, the writer of Hebrews, I love this. He says, let us think of ways to, let's say it together, to motivate one another right? There's times to love one another. That's our series, right? Love one another. We got to be willing to motivate one another, because there'll be people that you love, they have no motivation. They're fatigued, they're tired, they're worn out, they got hurt, they've been burned, they got their heart broken, and they're just like, I'm done, I'm not going to try anymore, I'm quitting. But you've got to be willing to motivate one another to what? To acts of love and good works. We've got to be willing to show up and say, look, I want to encourage you to take this next step. Because this relationship that you're letting just deteriorate, it doesn't have to fall apart. It could flourish. It could grow. And Rehoboam's friends, they weren't concerned about motivating him to love and good works at all. It was all about, we want Rehoboam to think well of us, right? They sure weren't saying, is this fair? They weren't saying, is this helpful in alignment with God's word? Or is this a positive direction for the future? That fails on all three of those, right? The advice that they gave. But there are times that we need people, and we need to be the people that are willing to do this for other people. It's been said, and I think it's so true, we tend to sin alone, but we heal together. In AA, if you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, they'll say it this way: I get drunk, we stay sober. We need each other, ladies and gentlemen. And we need to show up for each other to help motivate towards acts of love and good works. And this is so powerful when we begin to put this into practice and we begin to live this out and this takes guts, man. This takes courage to be this kind of friend. And my prayer for you today is that you would say, God, it scares me. It's going to push me out of my comfort zone, but I am willing to start loving people, to care more about the friend than what the friend thinks about me. Because you may go through a season when the friend doesn't really want to talk to you because you said something that was loving, but it was hard to hear. So that's the C of CPR. Here's the next one. Be present. That's the P, right? Be present. To show up for people. Don't just send a text. Sometimes that's all you can do, but many times it's not all you can do. But to show up, to love them, to encourage them. I love, again, this is Solomon talking about relationships, 27:17 from Proverbs. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And I love this picture of this axe being grinded right here. But you can't sharpen another friend from far away. You got to be up close. You can't sharpen the blade of this axe from across the room, can you? You can't do that through text. You got to be eyeball to eyeball. You got to be with the person. It's so powerful to show up. We have forgotten this. We've lost this in our world. 2024, we think, oh, this is good enough. Send, right? We need to start showing up for each other. We need to start showing that there's so much love, so much kindness from being able to show up and show people that you love them, especially when they're going through something hard. And this does not start when we're adults. This starts when we're little bitty, right? From the time we're very little. Some of you may remember when your kids were little. Some of you are like, kids are still little. Okay, well, when they're like, Daddy, watch. Mommy, watch this. They crave your attention, your presence, your eye contact. Check out what I'm doing. See this. Do you see this? Do you see what I'm doing? Or you feel those, you ever had this, the cold little toddler hands that grab your face and turn you towards them? I want ice cream. You know, like, don't miss what I'm about to tell you. Well, this happened to me and Leslie this last Friday. We were in Target, and our little granddaughter, Ivy, she can walk now. She's 16 months old, and she can walk on her own. But there was something she was like, Nana, Papa? And she wanted to walk with us, and she wanted us to look at her while she walks, right? She wanted us to be present with her, and let's do this together. We don't ever get away from that. That is so powerful. I don't care how old you are. There is something in you that you love. It's such a blessing to have people who show up for you, who show love and kindness through giving their attention, their energy to you. In other words, we all still crave for somebody to be fully present for us, no matter how old you are. And this is so powerful, to show up for people, especially when they're going through something really difficult. This last weekend, Leslie and I were invited to a memorial, or we went to one for a dear friend that we love. We love the family. And we went thinking, we're going to go there for them. Like this will be a really meaningful thing for them. And I found myself, we both left there going, oh my gosh, I needed that more than I realized. It blessed me to show up for them. It is crazy how God put this dynamic in us. And if we'll enact it, it unlocks a depth and a breadth of a relationship that you can have with another human being that you can never, ever have by just sending messages through snail mail, email, texting, messaging. You got to show up for people. You got to be in the room with them. You got to give them a hug around the neck. It's so powerful. And I hope you get that today, to be present. And here's the last one. So care more about the friend than what they think of you. Be present. And finally, be real. To be willing to drop the mask, be honest, be transparent, to be real with people. Is so powerful, and it's so true that we might impress people with our strength, right? But we connect with people through our weakness. We impact people through our weakness, through being willing to be honest about our struggles, our difficulties. Well, I still struggle with this in my mind sometimes. I still have to ask God for help, and I got to ask for friends for prayer, and it's still hard. It's still hard. To be honest about that, it's crazy how it draws people to you. It can encourage their faith, and it can strengthen their faith. I love what James, the half-brother of Jesus, said in James chapter 5, verse 16. He says, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be, let's say it together, may be healed. There is a healing that comes from this kind of brutal honesty, this kind of transparency. Now, what he's describing right here in these first three lines, that is not an acquaintance, right? This is not like over the first time you have coffee with somebody, you say, I'd like to share all of my darkest sins with you. Might be a little awkward, but this is somebody that you've done some history with. They know, you know them, you can trust them, but to be able to say, I need to share something with you and I need your prayers on this. I'm struggling with this. This is not an area of like great victory. Like every once in a while it is, but right now it's not. You need to have people like you can be that honest with. I need people I can be that honest. Everybody does. To be able to be that honest. And I love how he says, and the earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. Now, let me bring some clarity to this. The earnest prayer of a righteous person is not the person who sinned. It's the person who's praying for the person who sinned. And it's so powerful to have a friend that you're getting so honest and real with that they will pray for you. Maybe this is your spouse. Maybe this is a best friend. Maybe you have this kind of relationship with a sibling. That would be awesome. Or you have this kind of relationship with a best friend or somebody you do ministry with or you serve with here at Brazos Fellowship. It could be anybody. But to be able to have that kind of a person, there is a depth of healing that comes from being just brutally honest with somebody that you can be open on, and you drop the mask and you come clean, confess, and pray for each other. It's so awesome. And going back to Solomon, Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13, he says, a man who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful. But if he confesses and forsakes them, he gets another, let's say it together, another chance, right? If you're willing to be honest, look, I blew it. I'm so sorry. Would you please forgive me? Well, here's A, God always forgives. He always forgives. And B, people many times will. Many times will. I remember a few times way back in the past where the girls were little and I'd get frustrated. I'd say and act in a way that's like not getting the Dad of the Year award on that one. That was bad. That was not good. And I would sit down with my girls and say, I'm so sorry. Dad got upset. Shouldn't have acted like that. I'm so sorry. And just absolutely blown away at the forgiveness. Children are so resilient. They're like, I love you, Daddy. You're forgiven. You're the best daddy in the world. I'm like, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness. It's like God says, exactly. This is my grace. This is my mercy. And this is what happens when you get honest, when you get real with people. And there is a healing and there is a cleansing that comes when people share with one another, pray for one another. And I want to encourage you today that you would be willing to start to be this kind of CPR friend, that you would care more about the friend than what they think about you, that you would be present for them, show up for them, and that you would be real. Would you be willing to do that? And for some of you who are like, Will, I don't even know where to begin to form these kinds of loyal friendships that you've been talking about. Well, I want to encourage you today. One of the areas that here at Brazos Fellowship, Sean talked about it earlier, that we have heard the most feedback from people who have found great friendships here at this church is through serving teams and also through small groups. But serving teams, I want to encourage you in the card in the seat back in front of you to be able to connect. I would just encourage you to fill that out. Let us know where you might be willing to serve. You never know. You might find somebody that becomes a great new friend that could grow into this kind of a friendship. Just fill that out, drop it into that connect and give blue boxes in the back of the auditorium as you leave, and we'd love to follow up with you and help you get connected here at Brazos Fellowship. But even if that's not a possibility for you right now, I just want to encourage you, would you have the boldness, the courage to say, I want to take the next step with the Lord in my friendships? And here's the application prayer. I'm asking you to pray with me today, just simply saying, Dear Lord, I commit to care more about my friends than what they think about me. Be present and be real. There's our CPR. I invite you into my life. Forgive my sin and be my leader. Would you be willing to do that right here, right now? I want to encourage you. Let's just together right now, let's just make a fresh commitment to God that we're going to move forward with our friendships and taking it even more serious than maybe we ever have before. Because those friendships, God works a lot through those friendships. And whether or not we surrender them to God, they are shaping and molding us, either for good or for bad, in our life. Let's go before the Lord in prayer. God, we thank you so much for your love. I pray, God, right now, all across this room, for those that are present, those who are watching online, God, we would just make a fresh commitment to you right now. God, help us to love you and love our friends so much that we're willing to care more about the friend than what the friend thinks about us. And God, I pray that we would make a commitment right now to begin to be present. We would really make a priority out of being present for other people, showing up for people as much as we can. And finally, Lord, help us to be real, to be honest, to drop the mask, drop the guard, drop the online persona that we try to keep up at times, but just get real with each other. Get honest so that healing can begin. Lord, I pray all across this room right now, if you'd be willing to make that commitment with me in this moment of prayer, head bowed, eyes closed, just to care more about the friend than what they think of you, to be present, to be real. Would you just commit that to God right now? If you're making that commitment with me, would you just raise your hand and say, Will, I'm committing right now to be that kind of friend. Breathe some new life into some friendship, into a marriage, into all kinds of. God, I pray for every hand, every heart that's reaching out to you right now. God, please, Lord, let us take this to heart and take this and put it into practice, God. It has no power unless we apply it. It has no power to change us unless we go and put it into practice. God, I pray that you would help us to do that. That our faith would not be empty words, but we would live it out, God. That we would believe with our whole life what you said is true. And it is so true, it's worth staking our entire life on. Thank you for that, Lord. Help us to take the next step, even before the sun goes down today, to begin to start loving those around us differently, to love them the way you have called us to love. You may lower your hands. And God, right now, we just pray before you for any person that can hear my voice online, here in person, that would say, you know, where I need to begin is with a relationship with God. If you would just be there and say, gosh, there's something that's been missing from my life, and I haven't even been able to put my finger on it. But you need to know God created you to want Him. He created you to need Him. He created you to be loved by Him. And it is through His Son, Jesus, that He makes the way for you to be forgiven so that you're reconciled to Him. That you can be forgiven of sin. You can be made right with God right here, right now. Would you just pray this prayer with me? You know that God is calling you into a relationship with Him, and you have been holding off. You're not even sure where to get started. Well, today's the day. Now is your moment to get started with God. Would you pray right where you sit? Just say, God, I'm inviting you into my life. Jesus, would you forgive my sin? All of it. All of it. And would you be not only the forgiver of my sin, but the leader of my life from this moment forward? Be my forgiver, be my leader. Would you pray that right now, asking Jesus to take over? If you just for the first time in this moment of prayer ask Christ to forgive your sin and be the leader of your life, would you just lift your hand right now? I want to pray for you. Anybody here? I've given my life. God bless you, sir. Right back over here and right over here by the wall. And online, would you just indicate in the comment section, I just gave my life to Christ? Anybody else giving your life to Jesus today? Just prayed that prayer for the very first time in the balcony, in the floor? Anybody? Lord Jesus, thank you so much for opening up heaven so that we might know you. Thank you for giving us forgiveness that we do not deserve. We love you. We praise you for it. We ask that you would help us as we leave here today to love one another in a fresh and new way, taking your word, putting it into practice in our life. We pray it in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you back next Sunday. Take care.